India has been able to become a key player in the global political landscape. Now, the most populous country in the world is shaping up as an economic powerhouse. And amid these tensions, the United States is hoping to not rock the boat with either important strategic partner.
Increasingly, there's a narrative that this could involve the United States. I mean, I'm sure the United States is talking to both parties at one level. And now there is a comparison that, you need India for balancing China in the Indo-Pacific while you have an ally in Canada. So what do you do? So that kind of dichotomy. But I'm sure the US is talking to both the United States and both Canada and India. And I think two countries should just take certain steps. But I think the more important point for India is that this has been festering for a far too long time. And they need certain actions on the ground. The Indian government and the Indian people need certain actions on the ground. Clearly, there have been in the farmers' protests that went on in India and the rise of Amritpal Singh, who's a pro-Khalistani and now is in jail in India. We didn't hear of such a aggressive pro-Khalistani group inside India, which is vocal. But now you see the signs of, and clearly the monetary support, resources support from outside, which have helped these groups. So I think India wants it addressed once and for all. We'll have to wait and see what steps will be taken.
According to press reports and according to the US ambassador, yes, the United States shared intelligence with Canada with regard to the murder of Nijjar. We shared it after the fact, which suggests to me that we didn't have any smoking gun intelligence prior to the murder. But once the murder happened, we delved through our sources and said, here's some context. But the smoking gun supposedly came from the Canadian security services. But when the Premier of British Columbia was briefed on this, because of course, this is where Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed, what he said is, the classification, the briefing I got was basically an unclassified briefing. It could have been basically put together from Google. Here, the parallel reminds me of 2003, 2004, the so-called dodgy dossier that was briefed in Britain with regard to Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. It was entirely plagiarized from unclassified sources. Now, Justin Trudeau seems to be digging himself in the hole. There doesn't seem to be a smoking gun. Things are open to interpretation.
The US, which is right next door to Canada, as in US and India have really come close and the ties have become really warm, so to say. We're also part of the Quad with Japan and Australia, and we're looking at common ideas and common perspectives about the region, Asia Pacific, Indo-Pacific, whatever you want to call it. It would complicate things for them more than because for India and Canada, the trade ties have also been, what about, I think $12 billion, $13 billion around that, hovering around that. It's not really as high as, say, even Russia, China, US, or other countries that we've seen.
There is no doubt the ties between India and Canada are strained. Both countries will need to come together to mend the relationship, but how they get there is yet to be seen.
What the United States strategy is going to be on this is simply to drag things out until emotions stabilize. Frankly, behind the scenes, there's also a belief Justin Trudeau is on the outs, and that if Justin Trudeau loses elections, at maximum 2025, but his coalition with the New Democrats, the left-leaning group in Canada, is fraying, elections could happen any week. That once Justin Trudeau goes and he's losing in the polls, that the resolution will find itself. Within the United States, if I can be blunt, we have any number of crises over the years, whether during the Trump administration or during the Biden administration. And the US strategy seems to be, let's just wait until the news cycle moves on, then the pressure will be off. Already with Armenia and Azerbaijan, people in Washington are focusing a lot less on what's going on in Ottawa and Delhi. And I think the Biden administration is breathing a sigh of relief on that. The other point I would make from the US perspective is there's very little George Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden would agree on. The one thing they would agree on is the importance of the US-Indian relationship. And so India can count that the United States isn't willing to throw India under the bus in this case. Also, when the United States has politicized foreign policy in recent years, it's been because of the extreme fringes in Congress or the polemics coming from extreme fringes being played out in Congress. We've seen, for example, the U.S.-Israel relationship and the U.S.-Saudi relationship turn into a political football. There's no indication among either Republicans or among Democrats, even their extreme wings, that they're willing to do the same thing to the U.S.-India relationship.
I think in the short term, you are going to see the relationships and its aspects dip, because we don't see any positive sign from both sides. There's a clear political pressure inside Canada on the Liberal Party, and I don't think Justin Trudeau will budge from his stand, at least in the short term. But in the long term, I think both countries should look at the larger picture. Canada is not a country that we look at as an enemy country or a country that is. I mean, in fact, the diaspora connect that we have can be used in a very positive way. And I think if the two countries can really come together, if there are steps inside Canada to address some of these anti-India sentiments, there can be a way forward. Because clearly the steps that have been taken don't augur well for the relationship.